Aloha Aina. We want to welcome everyone to the Kuali'i Council series on Native Hawaiian programs at Manoa. We are so glad to share exciting programs with everyone and to interview people who have worked really hard to create the programs that are moving our whole campus towards an Indigenous serving university and a Native Hawaiian place of learning. Many groups and individuals on campus are sharing in this process and in this work, and one of the longstanding advocates is Kuali'i Council. So over the past several months, we've been highlighting and will continue to over the next several months the work of many of the programs that are bringing about Native Hawaiian success and are interacting with the communities and sustainability and culture. The 4 shows that we've done so far are the history of Kuali'i Council, the Native Hawaiian Student Services, the Department of Native Hawaiian Health, and Native Hawaiian Law. I'm Nalani Minton, and I'm the Program Director for Ikeao Pono at the School of Nursing for Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander and other Indigenous nurses.
Mahalo Nalani. My name is Kaiwi Puniko Ikaveku Life. I'm the Native Hawaiian Affairs Specialist here at UH Manoa right now and the co-host of this show. So thank you for that opening. Like Nalani mentioned, we've had over the course of several months several programs that we were highlighting, and today we're really excited to have with us one of the units within the School of Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge. And so today we will be focusing on just one of those units. Each unit is its own show for sure. And so today we'll be focusing on Kamakakuokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies. And we have a slide here that actually I just want to highlight the 4 units in Hawaii Nui Akea, including Kamakakuokalani, Kawaihuelani Center for Hawaiian Language, Kapapalo'i o Kanewai, and Native Hawaiian Student Services, all under Hawaii Nui Akea, But today we're just going to focus on one, which is Kamakaku. And of course, this is a unit that's near and dear to my heart. I am an alumni of this wonderful center, of my BA in Hawaiian Studies. And so it's important for me to share about the work that has impacted me and so many in my generation. But also from a broader perspective, I want to acknowledge that Kamakaku is one of the longest standing programs with any Hawaiian content on our campus in its entire history. Mm-hmm. And so today, as we focus on Kamakaku and the work that you folks do for students, for community, and for the university in general, I want to honor that and I want to celebrate that in the story that we tell today. Kamakakuokalani has been a member of Kuali'i Council with different faculty coming on and off the council since its inception. And so Kamakaku has benefited from the advocacy work that Kuali'i has done, and it has been part of that advocacy work throughout the campus and community. And so that's another reason why we highlight you folks today. In particular, we have with us 4 distinguished members of the faculty there. I'll start with Professor Lilikala Kume'elehiva, who is the current director of the center and professor of many, many classes as well. We also have Professor Jonathan Komakavivo Ole Osorio, past director, professor, and also the current Gladys Brown Endowment Chair. So welcome. Thank you for being here. And very exciting to introduce a new professor, brand new this semester, Professor Noilani Punivai, who we will get to know a little bit more in the show today. So I know all of you have extremely busy schedules, and so we really appreciate the time that you spend with us. So thank you for being here.
So the Hawaiian Studies is sort of the kupuna of all of the Native Hawaiian programs, and one of the most well-known departments on the campus. So we have a lot to cover, and it's really a rich and glorious history. So we just want to acknowledge that 30 years has made a huge difference. It's a long time and a short time, both. And will you tell us a little bit about how Hawaiian Studies came to be?
Sure. So there was a Hawaiian Studies program that was conditional, and it was being run by A.P. Anaya back in 1984, 85. And then Tony Marcella, who was the Vice President for Academic Affairs, called together the Ka'u Task Force, and these were Native Hawaiian academics from all the campuses. His question to us was, why were there so few Hawaiians at university and what could be done about it? At the time at Manoa, Hawaiians were only 5% of students and we were less than 1% of faculty. So the task force said, well, all we need courses that our students like to study. We need stuff about ancestral knowledge, and what do Hawaiians want to know? We needed a building, we needed to have more faculty, etc. So the Code Task Force report suggested expansion. AP Anaya was a 0.5 person with us with the program. He was actually a professor of geography. He had one room in Porteous, the now Saunders, that became the Hawaiian Studies office. There was one secretary and him. That was it. And he had to go back to teaching full-time in geography, so he chose Kekuni Blaisdell, your uncle, as the first director after him.
Move.
Yeah. And so at the same time, Toni Marcella brought Haunani K. Trask from American Studies, where she had filed a lawsuit against them for racist behavior. And they resolved the lawsuit by bringing her into Hawaiian Studies. And there was another position that was open. I applied for it. Others applied for it. I happened to get it. I was lucky enough to get it. If you look at the screen right now, you'll see Kekuni Blaisdell and Haunani K. And then you'll see also Marveli Naukana, who was our secretary, and she really was the boss. She knew everything about personnel, about budget, about everything. She taught us everything. And she would tell AP and I what to do. And then she'd tell Kekuni what to do, and the rest of us all what to do. We also have a photograph of Dr. Carlos Andrade, who's recently retired, back on Kauai, having a wonderful time. Yeah.
And he was also the first academic advisor, correct, in those early days, or after you? When you were able to hire someone.
Right.
He was the first academic advisor to be.
No,
he wasn't.
Akela Kaniopio was the first academic advisor after me.
Yeah.
And then
there's still a good picture of him.
Yeah, but he became academic advisor as well.
In the early days.
In the early days,
That's right.
yeah, right.
He's on Kauai launching a canoe.
I know, he's having a great time. Yeah.
So, and taking off from this, one of the really wonderful things is the young faculty. Well, we were younger. Not all of us were young when we were brought into Hawaiian Studies for the first time back in the early 90s. And I started there in 92, around the same time that Kanalu Young did, Dr. Kanalu Young. And we came in and it was just so incredibly exciting. People were preparing for Onipa'a. Your uncle was getting the tribunal ready, and all of these things were happening around us, sort of drawing us in, forcing us to work really hard to meet community needs. It was really amazing. It was such a wonderful time, and students, when they came to our classes and were a part of this, they could feel that they were a part of this history as well. So it was such a heady moment, and anything, it sort of defined what teaching was going to be like for us for the rest of our lives. We've never really changed about that. We still find that community activity, that community engagement to be fundamentally what we do.
What they call the Hawaiian Renaissance Times, yeah?
Yep. It was absolutely unreal. And to have, the mentors that we did, Haunani Ke, Lili Kala, and, Kekuni folks, basically bringing all of this stuff together, doing all of the groundwork that would mean meaningful work for younger professors and for students for the next 2 decades was just amazing.
Yeah.
So over time, we hear about how the program has continued to grow and how everything has changed and all the many successes and achievements. And we'd like to know more in specific about the building, which came about to create a foundation for all of the programs that exist now.
Well, the building was recommended by the Kualii report. And so when we first went, Haunani K and I went to see, since we were the professors now in Hawaiian Studies, we went to see, with Kekuni actually, the president then was Al Simone, to ask him for a building. He said, you guys can't have a building, you're the new kids on the block. And Haunani K said, we're the native people, we've been here forever, we'll be here forever, one day you'll be gone. So we went to his press conference when he left to wave him aloha. But really, the way we got the building was because Gladys Kamakakuokalani Brandt supported it. She was the chair of the Board of Regents. Many of her know her as Gladys Ainoa Brandt because that was her last name, but her grandmother's name was Kamakakuokalani, and that's the name she carried.
Wow.
And she told Al Simone, I'm sorry, Al, we're going to have a building. And I have the votes. So she organized the regents to vote for it. Then we had to get the money for it. And Hanani K and I went out to the legislature. We led demonstrations to get people to support the building. It actually took 10 years of arguing before we finally got the building up. And a thank you to the legislature for giving us the money. It was $7 million to build a building for Hawaiian Studies. It was a lot of money at the time, and we have served so many. What I love is the way community feels that they can come to our building. We wanted it to be a gateway, on the eastern horizon of the university where the sun rises and enlightenment begins. And we wanted to make sure that all Hawaiians knew they had a home at that place and they could always be welcome there. So that's how we got it. And thank you to Kawahikawa and Chen, our architects, for helping us make it a Hawaiian space. They really took great care in doing that. And we have reinterment of kupuna there in the middle. They paid for that. The architects actually put that in there for us because it couldn't be paid for by state funds. I think having a Hawaiian place to work at, being surrounded by young Hawaiians who want to change the world, being surrounded by great professors who are Hawaiian and who are also wanting to change the world, makes it a delight to come to work every day. And I never want to retire. I want to work forever at my place because I love teaching.
Yeah, the warning is out.
Yes.
So it's a great place to create leaders, and you're one of them too, John. What thoughts do you have?
I think the fact that so many people come there. I mean, the building, the legacy of Auntie Gladys is something that draws leaders from throughout our community. It's really rare that you see a weekend where the building's not being used for something. There's hula, there are symposiums, there's all of these things, and we don't have to go to. I mean, they basically come to this space, and we can take part in it, and it's been wonderful. But just one thing about the reinterment of those ancestors. Kanalu and I both participated in that in a midnight ceremony. We were there, and from that moment on, I've always thought of that place as sacred, and that you never feel as though you're ever threatened because your ancestors are there and they're guarding us.
It's like in Aotearoa, there's so many marae. In here, in our home, we have a lot of educational places that are the sacred places for us. So, Nailani, just wanted to ask you, since you're the newest member right now of Kamakaku, for some of your thoughts about being here and some of your first impressions and the work that you're contributing.
Thank you. I think it's great hearing about the history of the place and how it came to be and what it represents for the community. And when I first started coming here and being a part of Kamakaku, what I see is the place that it has on campus. And the fact that it's not just the people there, but the place, the building is still also a part of the aina. So you can feel the environment by being in that building. I think that was a wonderful addition. Seeing the lo'is outside, hearing the Manoa stream trickle by, I see it through my window, and I can see every day it's my part of Kilo. It's my way to be a part of the environment. Even though I'm kind of stuck in my office or working with people, I can see what the stream is doing every day, and it helps ground me and understand kind of that perspective where I come from. Because I want that stream sort of to be my vision. Like, I can always keep a check on it every day. Am I doing what am I supposed to be doing? Is this river staying healthy? Is this kahawai flowing the way it should be? And it just helps me be able to kilo. And the building itself, too, my students, I have them observe every day as part of class. And you can do that in our building because there's so much native plants around. They can see native birds. They can see the valleys and the mountains above us. So I think it's been a really neat time to be at the building because now it's in fruition. You guys helped build it, and now it's in fruition, and I get to step in when everything's growing, and you just have this really healthy feeling that our lahui is growing and it's becoming healthy. So,
Now, mahalo for all of you and your stories that you share. I was actually with a grad student a few minutes ago before I got here, and I was telling him that we were going to do this show today, and I was explaining to him kind of the story, and the story that you folks tell from Porteous to the young professors, who are being mentored in the community work, and what the building can mean to a brand new professor today is really important for folks who know. And he was excited that this show was happening because he's like, yeah, I went to Hawaiian Studies and I want to know that story and I want to tell that story. So I appreciate you folks telling it because we need to remember it and make sure we pass it on generation to generation. And I think that's part of the reason why we do these shows, to kind of capture that and these great mo'olelo. So I just want to mahalo you. And so as we think about, in a sense, Hawaiian Studies starting from very humble beginnings and really having to struggle its way through, and actual human beings doing that work day in and day out to grow the program to where it is today, where, Noelani can come to a new job as an assistant professor in a beautiful building next to Hawaii. I mean, that all takes really a lot of work. To also growing this important curriculum that we know happens at Kamakakuokalani today. And I want to recognize, and we have a little slide here showing that you do have a BA program and also a master's program. And that's amazing in itself. And that story we could have spent a whole show talking about. But we're not today, unfortunately, because we only have 58 minutes. So today we're going to focus on the BA, right? And just as a kind of the foundation of what everything else grows from in Kamakakuokalani. And so I know this because I used to be a student, and then I also know this because I used to be an academic advisor. There's basically two parts of the program, right? The undergraduate core and then the undergraduate area of concentration, if we're talking just about the BA. So I'm wondering if I could ask Professor Kumeile Hiva and also Professor Osorio to talk a little bit about, to begin, talking about the purpose behind the core. And maybe I'll just start with Professor Kumeile Hiva. And so I have a slide here that shows actually the prerequisites that are required and the Hawaii Nui Akea school requirements. So maybe we can start here, and then we have a next slide that also talks about the core.
Okay, so here we're looking at a culmination of change over time. We really wanted to make sure all Hawaiian Studies students were grounded in Olelo, Hawaii. And so we wanted to make sure that that was a prereq for coming into our program. That's why those are prerequisites. Now, you can do it at the same time as you come in. So if you're a freshman, you can do 101, et cetera, as well as come and declare yourself as a Kamakakuokalani. But when we merged into Hawaiian language and Hawaiian studies together, now we have Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge and certain requirements there. So now Hawaiian 100 is required for all. And besides 101 and 301 to 302, Hawaiian language, that there is Hawaiian Studies 107 and Hawaiian Studies 270. And I wrote 107, but John teaches it to now. And I love 270, which I also wrote, Hawaiian Mythology, because it really starts our way of looking at how we as Hawaiians, in traditional times with our gods, were connected to the rest of Polynesia. Yeah.
Thank you. And then we move on to the core. If you're going to talk a little bit more about some of the mana'o behind the core and why it's important.
Okay. So, John, why don't you take Hala'olaka?
Okay, so one of the core courses or core trains is Hala'olaka, and we knew from the beginning that that artistic expression, what our people did with their hands, with their voices, with their, with their creative side, is an essential part of our Ike. This is not a small part. It's not an add-on. It's actually central.
Right.
Music and mele is really the carrier of our mo'olelo for countless centuries, thousands and thousands of years. So those things have to be learned and they have to be honored. The visual expression, the things that we do with our hands, the things that we do that make things that grace our households, that make life worth living, that demonstrate, particular fastidiousness, patience, skill, all of those things, right? we want those things for us, and we notice many things that in other parts of the academy that teaches art and music, they don't necessarily pay any attention to our stuff.
Right.
They don't think that there's anything particularly important or gracious about our art. So we say, hey, come teach for us.
Right. And so I just want to make clear a couple of things I'm going to put my academic advisor hat on for people who are watching and want to be clear. So in this slide that we have up here, students are required to take one of the courses in each of these areas to introduce them to that area of interest. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We're talking about mo'olelo, since it kind of flows from
And
mo'olelo.
mo'olelo iwi. Now the early hires at Kamakakuokalani, besides Haunanike, were all historians, all people who came from the history
And
department.
she was political scientist.
She led the way, Lili Kala led the way, and I came and then Kanalu. So, we interpreted Mo'olelo Iwi as basically it's straight on history. We're teaching the history of the kingdom, we're teaching the history of our ancient people, we're teaching modern or contemporary Hawaiian history. All of those were courses that we wrote up. I wrote up courses in law and society, and music was a history course as well. But now we're becoming more and more convinced that Mo'olelo Iwi is not just about those stories, it's about how we told those stories. So it's the literature, it's the orature, it's looking at how we form those words and what that poetry meant and all of those things. So now we're spending a lot more time making sure that we can read those 19th century newspapers and that we can, incorporate them into our stories as well.
Absolutely.
We're even discussing perhaps increasing the requirement for Hawaiian language to fourth year. We encourage people to take fourth year Hawaiian language so that by the time they get to our master's program, we really could be teaching a lot more courses in Hawaiian studies, So that's an area that we're kind of upgrading in. And that leads me back to Kumukahiki, because if we were fluent in Hawaiian by the time we finished the BA, then at the MA we could start studying Tahitian or Maori or Samoan and start to compare, because the languages are so incredibly similar that really infuses our understanding of Mo'olelo, because some of those old chants and stories have glosses of words that we don't find in our dictionary, but they're in the Tahitian dictionary. So how does it change across those spaces? So Kumukahiki is comparative Hawaiian and Polynesian and indigenous studies. And it's something, it really makes me happy to see the comparisons. We even had a guy from the Pueblo, a professor from the Pueblos in New Mexico, talk to us about how when someone is dying, they give their ha to the next generation. And I said, are you talking about the Hawaiian word? He said, no, this is a Pueblo word. So that comparison between Hawaii and many other places in the world shows us how our ancestors were so related. And I can go on like that forever. So temples and gods and all of those kind of things. But the other part is, okay, where's the ancient? What's happening today? So the kukulu haupuni is really, part of it was politics. Part of it was, what do we do in education, in medicine? How are we doing our immersion schools today? How do we proceed to run our own nation? And so that's the kukulu part that we see in our area of concentration.
Right. So I want to go back to the slide real quick. And so we have these 5 kind of introduction areas. So students are required to take 1 class in Halaualaka, 1 class in the Malama Aina, which we're going to get to in a second more deeply, 1 class in Kumukahiki, which there's only one, so it's a requirement, right? Hawaiian genealogies, Mo'olelo Oiwi, you got to take Chiefs of Post Contact Hawaii,
right.
and then 1 class in Kukulu Puni to give folks kind of a foundation, if you will. And also a taste to then jump into these areas of concentration. Yeah, is that correct?
Right. That's
Perfect.
correct.
Okay. And so then when we move on, and so then students have taken all of these, and then they say, oh, I really like Malama Aina, perhaps, and I want to do that. And I know from my time there that, so when you pick one of 5 areas of concentration, and you take 12 credits in that area to fulfill kind of your focused area within Hawaiian studies, right? So I'd like to start by looking at the Malama Aina section. And we have here today Noi to talk about that Malama Aina section. Would you like to expand on some of your mana'o? I mean, there's a whole bunch of classes listed here, but also the things that you bring to that section.
Yeah, I think the Malama Aina courses are a really good example of what Hawaiian studies encompasses, where it starts in the history, and it also has a lot of core classes where you get your hands wet. And so those classes are really interesting, and the students really enjoy learning about Lau'au Lapa'au, learning how to balama loko'i'a, really working in a lo'i, and how do you do that in an academic setting? How do you take it out just from what your hands are doing, and how do you think about it? How do you understand how this is part of your lifestyle, or how it can be, and how it can build kind of your expertise in Malama Aina? Yeah, and I think maybe just talk about how I got started in that.
Absolutely.
was really just, I was raised both in a hula halau and also with a really deep love of science. And I had those dual passions throughout my undergraduate education, throughout my high school career. But back then that was really different. A lot of people didn't really have those two passions. And it's neat today to see how people are able to bring those together. And it seems like where we're going is where people use their Hawaiian studies or their connection to their ancestral wisdom to really build upon whatever their interest is in. And I was able to do that in my interest in marine science. I was able to travel a lot. I went to Washington State University and I studied a lot of invertebrate communities that was really ma'atu here in Hawaii and Hilo, brittle stars, urchins, sea cucumbers, but I studied them 300 meters underneath the ocean floor off of Washington. So being able to connect those two. But the whole time I was up there, I paddled canoe. I was connected to a culture and I understood how I could bring those values back to Hawaii and really build my expertise here with that background. And so my attention or my interest in malaming our reefs and our ocean is because we're an ocean people. I mean, Apeli Hau'ofa, who was a big part of Hawaiian studies back then too, in his book, A Sea of Islands was just an amazing kind of focus for me to really understand who I am as someone who loves the ocean, but of this culture and of this people. And so I started. Our people are, just as Carlos Andrade within Hawaiian Studies. He was a big ocean person. And like you said, he's launching that va'a today or yesterday. And so we perpetuate that. And I believe our pilino for the ocean, our connection to it, is the only way that it will survive and flourish. So even though I've come at it from a scientific perspective and learned how to study it, I know that the only way we're going to save it is because we love it and because we have a connection to it. And that's where I think Hawaiian Studies really brings a neat perspective as we try to grow this lahui and grow this environment and make sure it's healthy as we go forward is by making sure that the people understand what this environment and love it. And our Hawaiian culture has so many great examples of how we did that as a people and can just keep us going on that track as we go forward. And so my research has really kind of built upon that and just trying to show people what are the different ways we can aloha aina and how do we interact with this ocean around us. And so in my research, that's the questions that I've asked people. I'm asking them, what do you know about this ocean? Trying to hear their stories. How do they understand it? How do they describe it? And knowing that they describe it, people who are on the ocean every day describe it and understand it in ways differently than scientists do. But they understand that ocean at a connection that we have no idea. They're the ones who are in there every minute of every day or at every morning. Just think of all the knowledge you get when you do something over and over again. And so that this connection to place is where I really believe that the answer is in our people. And so I've really worked a lot with understanding people's worldviews. And you can't understand someone's worldview unless you participate in it. And so that's the same thing with Hawaiian Studies. Until you participate, until you start to observe and use those language, use those words that activate that action, you can't make it come alive. And so that's what my research is looking at, how everyone looks at the ocean differently and how, by you looking at it, how you describe it, what kind of knowledge you can show about that. And it'll all help us manage it better because we'll all have a better understanding of what that resource is.
Mahalo.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I know you also work with some other Malama Aina faculty. Would you like to talk a little bit about those folks and how you work in collaboration with them and doing different projects?
Yeah, so I have, we have many different faculty in Malama Aina, and it's been a growing focus in Hawaiian Studies, building on the past history of the politics and history like you talked about. And then we're strengthening, how do we strengthen this lahui and ensure we have healthy communities? And that's where the Malama Aina comes in. After you build on your platform, your foundation of who you are as a people and how you were governed before, where are we going? And I think that's where Malama Aina, why it has such a strong focus and interest from the students. And 70% of our undergraduates are choosing the Malama Aina concentration, and how do we serve them? And so there's faculty like Lily Kala here, who's been served as a faculty member for a long time. Kamana Beamer brought on not too long ago. Kei Kueva Kikiloi, and myself. It's growing. We're young professors. We're really starting out here. And we're looking at how we can take the students who are getting hands-on in the field and really start to empower them to think about their roles in Malama Aina and what are the skills they need to do that. And I think Hawaiian Studies allows them to do that. Yeah, and then now we have different faculty who are joining us through the Hui Aina Mamona.
Right.
And that's the next kind of growth area from Malama Aina, is thinking how do we go in more interdisciplinary and work with other factors across the campus. So it's not just the faculty here in Hawaiian Studies who are growing Malama Aina students. In fact, faculty and departments across the university. To me, that's the only way you really indigenize a place of learning. You were talking about that, Nalani, earlier, on making this an ancestral place of learning. I mean, I think it's how you have people in all the different disciplines, in health, in law. And so in the Hui Aina Momona faculty, we have people who join us from the law school and people who join us from Sea Grant and CTAR, the Natural Resources and Environmental Programs. So we have Malia Kudagawa, who's also joined us in the Malama Aina faculty. And we also have Mehana Vaughn and Greg Chun, who are joining us from other disciplines. I think our faculty are really neat because they each bring different focus with them. And so at Malia and Kamana, we get a really good focus on law and how do we empower our communities to really fight for access and management of our natural resources and really give people those tools to be active on the land. They teach courses in geography, ethics, Hawaiian resource use. Kekuewa Kikiloa has been really proactive in creating internships and field methods and getting people really strong in their skills on how do you document a place and how do you really research the history of that place and then put it into practice as how you malama it going forward. So I think these are areas we can each support ourselves really well.
We had some hot new courses come out on Friday, and I wonder if you could promo your 2 courses that you're going to be teaching when they go through. You know, it takes a year, but what are you going to bring up for us?
Yeah, so I'm trying to hopefully pilot a little bit more courses, giving students some really hands-on experience malaming our ocean resources. And so I'm going to be piloting an Aloha Kanaloa class and a Kia'i Kanaloa classes. So how do we steward our ocean resources? And they're going to be based on the Hawaiian way of understanding our resources, and how they utilize those resources. And it'll be very hands-on. So I expect the students to make some products that we can taste or feel or touch or use in the future as they start to gain that pilina with the ocean.
What about the new water courses that are coming out? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so water is a very hot topic in Hawaii and actually across the US right now. And the water management course that Kamana Beamer and Kekuewa Kikiloa will be teaching is going to help students understand the laws and the rights of access to the water, and also how water itself, kanawai, is kind of the foundation for how we manage our resources. And it also changes. Hawaii is very unique in the way that we manage water, and it's very different than how the rest of the United States manages their water. And it's based on our Hawaiian worldview. And I think by them teaching this course, we'll really see how the Hawaiian worldview is not just a way of thinking, but it's a way of managing our resources. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about Malama Aina. It's not just taking care of our places in Hawaii, it's taking care of our places in Hawaii through a Hawaiian worldview.
Yeah.
And those classes, I think, will help us shift our actions toward those.
I think one of the things about an Indigenous serving university is that it helps people to understand that there's cosmic knowledge, that natural resources to some people are actually life sources to others. And because there are life sources, we honor them and they're sacred to us, as they should be to every human being, and as they really are to every human being, but a lot of times they need that awareness. And so these courses are really helping people to understand that in most Indigenous communities, the law of water is the first law. That's where it all begins.
And on a more mundane level, I mean, they are also a part of our laws.
Yeah.
Some of our best laws in the state today are basically holdovers from the kingdom, from kingdom law. And from the very beginning, you know, our chiefs and our leaders understood the importance of maintaining relationships of people with land and care for that. So.
And a lot of those laws of the Kanawai embrace our values of asking permission, taking only what you need, sharing what you take. Everything that comes to you in a clean form, you pass to the next community in its cleanest form too. You know, those very basic laws that are cosmic laws, but they're so practical. It's how places and people survive. Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you, Noi.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm very excited.
the director's excited. That's always good. I have this last slide up that on Hui Aina Momona, just as we kind of transition and you know, as we think about, I want to go back to two things about worldview and how important that is, right? And it's so exciting that we can be talking about those things in Hawaiian Studies now, and across the university and across the world, really, right? But that when we talk about worldview, like you're saying, and not just talking about it at this theoretical level, but actually engaging in the hana and the kuleana that you know, to make it come alive. And I think that's why Malama Aina has been such a popular area for students in Hawaiian Studies, because you can use it. You can incorporate it into your life today. It's what your kupuna did, but you can do it today too. Yeah, and I think it's so exciting. So mahalo for that work.
Yeah, so that new certificate that the Hui Aina Mamona is going to be talking about, and what they're looking at is really, if you show that slide, about one for communities and how do we kia'i our resources. And I think as they try to understand how do we team teach courses across university, we'll get to be able to do that more as a collective and not in our silos. And I think that's also one of those answers to going forward.
Absolutely.
Is that as we work together more as faculty across their disciplines, we'll be able to grow the people and support our communities in the areas that they're really interested in.
And have our students have that kind of experience across. Can we just see that slide again for a second? I want people to know that momona is a term that means fat and delicious. And Aina Momona is a land that's fat with food. It refers to the ocean too. So how do you make it momona? You have to kia'i. And these are things that our students can learn and then find jobs in Department of Land and Natural Resources, in NOAA, in Kamehameha, land management, and many places that we're looking at. So we want to see how we can make sure that our students will go from having their degrees into jobs where they're serving our alahui, our people, our islands, and we can make Aina Momona.
And I'm going to just do one little plug for education, since that's my background. And that can also be the foundation for teachers who are going into our schools, right, to grow a new generation of children who understand science and culture in very different ways. And how do we malama aina? So I'm going to push us to our next area of concentration. They're so exciting, which is kumukahiki. And so if we look at kumukahiki, I have a slide here. And you spoke a little bit about it before, Professor Kume'elehiva. I know this was my AOC. This was my area of concentration because I had that really, really fortunate opportunity to travel to New Zealand for a semester, to Aotearoa, actually down to South Island, to Otago University. And I took 12 credits of Maori courses there and was able to apply them to my degree, right? Which is amazing and great and perfect in this kind of area of concentration. So I was wondering if you would talk maybe just a few minutes on kumukahiki. I know you started to talk about it before, why it's important, what you can get from this area.
So kumukahiki is based on Hawaiian Studies 270, Hawaiian mythology, which it compares with Polynesian mythology, and Hawaiian Studies 341, Hawaiian genealogies, which looks at how we interface our genealogies in different parts of the Pacific, especially in Tahiti and Raiatea. And it's very clear when you look at the traditions that the people from Tahiti come north to Hawaii first. And so the worship of Kane, the god of the sun, is very strong on Kauai, on Oahu, Molokai, etc. In fact, all the islands in Hawaii. And then the Raiatea guys who worship Kanaloa and Wakea come next, and they rename Hawaii Island. See, the old name of Raiatea is Hawaii. So when they come to Hawaii Island, it was called Lono Nui Akea. And they changed the name to Hawaii to have that connection with Raiatea. And it's not by accident that the mountains are called Mauna Loa for Kanaloa and Mauna Kea for Wakea. And you find those names actually also in Rarotonga, Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, and you find them in Rapa Nui. So that knowledge and those two gods going together, Kanaloa, god of ocean, Wakea, Orion, god of stars, move around the Pacific. And in Hawaii, we're actually a merger of that Tahiti and Raiatea traditions. So I love all of that stuff. Now there's temples. Oh, okay, we can study the temples. So you have some temples that are zero north, one wall zero north. You measure the movement of the sun from solstices to equinox and back. And our ancestors did that. So we just went down to Tahiti a couple of years ago, thanks to the branch chair. Thank you very much. And we surveyed 30 temples in 21 days on 5 different islands. A majority were either zero north or diagonal north. So they were measuring the same kind of thing in Tahiti. Next, we want to go to the Marquesas, we want to go to Rapa Nui, we want to go to Mangareva, and to really look at what was ancestral knowledge. So kumukahiki is based there, but now today it's also how are we as cousins in Polynesia, and this is something John works on a lot. What are our similar kinds of decolonization strategies? What are our similar kinds of politics? How do we make sure our own native languages survive? And so John's been working a lot on what are the modern similarities. Yeah, you can talk about that.
Sure, and in fact, I'll talk about the branch chair as well. Auntie Gladys left a remarkable bequest, when she passed, and it was a sizable amount of money that, got deposited into the UH Foundation, and we are allowed to spend the money that it earns, right, in interest. And it's a tremendous amount of money, and it's a tremendous gift. And the way we've used it, because it's really about our relationship with Polynesia and the wider Pacific, we have used this to do exchanges, artistic exchanges between us and Creative New Zealand through Miley, Miley Andrade in particular. They do an exchange back and forth practically every year. We have sent students and faculty down to Tahiti to study temples, and they did the most amazing kind of study and gave these wonderful presentations when they returned home. I have taken poets and artists to Aotearoa, slam poets. It's really fun. Just to work with young children, actually middle schoolers there. But more recently, we've taken the same poets and gone to Papua New Guinea. Because in the Western Pacific, the impacts from big businesses and multinational corporations and governments, their own governments, is essentially contributing to some real misery there with horrific kinds of mining schemes that are destroying water and really making it difficult for people who are still trying to subsist on the land. So we've gone to conferences in the Western Pacific and Papua New Guinea and Fiji and other places, just to try and express how important it is to kind of learn a little bit of what we've gone through. The modernization that's taken place in Hawaii, which has dispossessed so many of our people and made it so difficult for us to live, are things that newly independent countries in the Pacific could really learn something from, and we certainly can learn from them.
Right? And we've been, the times in Tahiti, we don't only look at temples, we meet the politicians down there. Tahiti is currently going through decolonization through the United Nations and likely will become an independent country soon. So as we look at what we do with dealing with the colonizer or dealing with the idea of independence or dealing with the United Nations, all of these things are being taught at Hawaiian cities.
And Kuni really heightened the knowledge of that area.
Awareness, yes, he did.
Mahalo, Uncle.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I know you talked a little bit about Hala'olaka earlier, and I have a slide of all the classes that you can take under this area. Do you want to say anything more about
First,
this
I'll
area?
look at the slide and see what it is.
Okay.
So, yes, and many of these courses are taught by three wonderful faculty: Leah Keave, Miley Andrade, and April Drexel. We have been really, really fortunate to have people of their talent and their ability, but also their commitment to Polynesian and Hawaiian visual arts. Their expertise is really quite amazing. What we need more of, I think, is more in mele, more in music and hula. You'll see that the hula that we do offer actually isn't in our center, but really in the music department. And I'm looking for the day where performing arts, which would include oratory and theater and that sort of thing, we have faculty that can teach that as well. Every now and then you think, somebody's going to come along. Aaron Salah leaps to mind. And then one of these days he's going to come teach for us. And then we're going to have a really amazing program. But there are other people out there. And so I just want to encourage, Hawaiians who really are dedicated to performing arts. If we might have a place for you.
Yeah.
We want you to have a vision and start to figure out what you could do in terms of creating a program for us.
Well, and we're working with Keave Lopes over in Hawaiian language. He teaches music there, and he teaches performance. And his group, the Hui Aloha Tuahine, they're Tuahine Serenaders rather. They're so fabulous that we have them at every program. They're performing for us.
That's true. Yeah. I thought we weren't supposed to talk about them, but yes, that's true.
Sorry.
Only because we're going to have a whole show just on them, because there's so many amazing things happening in Hawaiian language as well. But you're right, and I appreciate that that call out to especially I think young people who are interested in becoming performers, but knowing that that's important in the academy too. And I think as a hula dancer myself, and all of us in music and hula in this room. And I think of Kumu Keave Lopez as well. in those practices is that worldview, right? That is so critical that you can't experience any better way than through those practices. And that's what our university needs. That's what this AINA needs, right? Is leaders who have been raised in those practices with that worldview and that can take it to every single area of our community. And I think so, mahalo for that call out, because we want our young people to know that performance is important. It's Hawaiian and it belongs in our university as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Let's move on a little bit to our next area of concentration, which is Mo'olelo Oiwi. And I know that that's something, as we've heard already today, that is central to all the work that we do in so many different ways. So I was wondering if I could perhaps just ask Professor Punivai and Professor Osorio to maybe just talk a little bit about how Mo'olelo Oiwi informs the work that each of you do in your areas at the university.
Yeah, thank you. I think my research, of course, is very different from the stuff they've done in politics and history. But I really look at ka'au, and I love to get the inspiration from the ka'au. So the ka'au such as Kahuiki Mano Pu'uloa and the ka'au of the wind gourd of La'o Mau Mau. These mo'olelo are rich with knowledge about the environment and what our ancestors observed and how they kiloed it and how they explained about it. And so I've really held my students helping me look at unique ways that we can understand the messages that they're communicating to us about our environments from there. In Kahuiki Mano Pu'uloa, it was a shark. He was born in Kea'au, but his tutu was from Pu'uloa on Oahu, and he travels around and he meets people of very different standings. He learns how to greet with them, but he's also traveling throughout our islands and also to Kahiki. So he goes back and he's traveling these routes. And what can we learn about the ocean from understanding this mano who's interacting with the ocean, the different currents he takes, the ocean he takes is. And so I look at mo'olelo in very different ways, both in ka'au and then also the ka'au that's happening today. Like I talked about before, I really understand the knowledge and the wisdom of the people who are our watermen, the ones who are in the ocean every day. And so in my research, I listen to their stories and I listen to the knowledge they talk about. What do they observe every day? What's important to them? What's changing? What isn't changing? And from their stories that they're telling me about the ocean today, we can understand how to malama our resources also. Yeah.
It's so awesome to hear that, and I hope everybody who's listening paid attention, rewind, and listen to that again, because you're a scientist and you're using ka'au, right? And so you can be a 21st century scientist who graduates, has a PhD in a science discipline, but also uses mo'olelo, and that those two things don't conflict with one another. They inform one another, actually. And that the stories of people today are just as important, right? The mo'olelo of today are also important because those will be the ancestral mo'olelo of the future. So mahalo. Yeah.
I've been teaching, and my favorite course teaching is post-contact chiefs, which is a course like so many others that Lili Kala, designed and allowed younger faculty to teach. And what I love about that course is talking about the leadership values and ethics of our 19th and 18th century ali'i nui. The way they understood the world, the way they related to their people, the way they were responsible for their word. The people that you can really, really admire, from Kamehameha to Lili'uokalani, all of them give such models of political behavior, of rightness, of accountability. And when you're teaching or talking about modern politics, and you try and do a comparison between the leadership today, not just in Hawaii, but nationally, everywhere, and you find it the students don't need you to point this out to them. When when we're going through this, they can see, they can make those comparisons for themselves. So we get students to understand that, if they want to go into politics, if they're going into leadership, that there are certain things we expect from them, and we expect them to remember these stories. We expect them to remember what it is to behave like a chief, and so I love this class. I love how it inspires, hopefully how it inspires students.
That's actually, the 342 that Chiefs of Post Contact come off of 341, which is the 100 generations of the chiefs before contact. And the story of Umi, where he's taught by his mother that chiefly behavior is you feed everybody. And he feeds all the kids in the neighborhood, so that even when his father, his actually Hanai father, comes home to eat, there's nothing to eat, he doesn't care if the father's going to be mad at him. His job is to feed the people. So that idea of a good chief is one who feeds the people. But then when we come into 342, what I love about that time period is those chiefs absolutely love the lahui. They really, really love their people, or the cousins, those who are all related. And it's so different from modern politics today. So I say to Hawaiians today, to the students in my classes, at 341, I ask them, how will you serve the lahui? And if you're going to become a political leader, how do you love the lahui? And if you're looking at voting for somebody, look around. Do they love you? If they don't love you, I wouldn't vote for them, okay? Because, are they going to help you? And are they planning to get your land? Are they planning to get your housing? Are they planning to do things for you? Or are they just going to say, vote for me and I'm going to be famous?
Right.
So that really is what comes out of our mo'olelo stories.
Yes.
So we as historians really enjoy this.
And I think that's actually a really beautiful segue into the last section. We're getting close to the ending of our time together. But the last area of concentration is kukulu aupuni, right? Envisioning the nation. And you've already both talked so much about it in a sense, because it stems from thinking about the aupuni that we had control over in the past, and how do we regain and malama that area. And it's this is one of the things I love about Hawaiian Studies professors. So I have this picture here of the 1993 Sovereignty March. I was 10 years old at the time, and we have here in the front row of this picture Professor Lilikua Kamelehiva, the late Professor Kanalu Yang, and Professor Hanani K. Trask, right? Three of the core folks of a larger core team from Hawaiian Studies. And I think kukula aupuni for me I've always had this picture in my mind, right? Like, how do we become the leaders of our people? And, whether it be a march, or leading the march, or leading in your home. And so I think that's one of the unique things about Hawaiian Studies professors is you folks have been both leading in the classroom and at the university, and also leading in the community, right? And so that's been a great model for us. I mean, we see, the Kalekuakaeos, the Kaiperis who are now, here, the Mehana Hines, Mahina Poi Poi Paishan, all these people who have come through your programs because of the content of the courses, but also because you modeled this for them. You modeled this for us. And so I was wondering if maybe just a minute from each of you to talk about what kukula aupuni means to you, and how your work both in community and academy has really informed that mana'o over time.
You want to go first?
Sure. I'm just going to say that what kukulu aupuni means to me is building from the family up, and I want people to know that you are Lilikala's daughter, and that Jamaica Osorio is my daughter.
Absolutely.
And they have basically, you have followed right along the path that we started walking, decades ago. Starts with a family. It reaches out to everybody around you, because the community is what also nurtures the family. Absolutely. And ultimately, there is no division between our work and our families.
Absolutely. I wonder if I could have the slide of Avocado Hinki up, please.
Yeah.
I think kukulu aupuni has to do with land. And I want us as Hawaiian people to run our own land base. So if you go to avocadohinki.org, which is my website, you will find maps of the Hawaiian Islands and the 1,300 ahupua'a. So we need to know the names of our ahupua'a. We need to know the names of our land. We need to know how to take care of the land. And then we will run the country. I'd like to segue over to Noelani to talk about what she thinks kukulu aupuni means to her.
I feel that all the courses in Hawaiian Studies, that all the students should definitely take courses in all of them, because it's the only way we understand our foundation and how we know what our future is. And as she says, the family is a part, the aina is a part of our future. And you can't love someone you don't know. Like you said, so you love your daughter, you nurture her, you raise her up to be strong and to be a model for others. It's the same way with the land. You raise that land, you have to know that land before you can love it. So when people say the aloha aina, what aina do they love? How do they love that aina? Because if we love Hawaii, then we're all gonna aloha it, and we'll all make sure she is strong. And that starts with the family. It starts with the people who can raise and malama that aina.
And I think in our culture, we know that the right intentions bring about the right actions, which bring about the right outcomes. And that is part of our family responsibility. But also, even though great leaders rise, there's so much leadership quality in each person. And in these days of climate change, it's going to take everybody. It's going to take everyone realizing the potential that they have for the kuleana of Aloha Aina. Because that, as you say, we have the thousands of years of observation of our ancestors and of looking at all of the kinds of knowledge that springs itself from the natural world which we observe. But now we're facing, some of the violations that have created the oceans rising and climate change and the need for food production. And in a way, it's making us all return to our homelands because it has to start from there. So it's really an amazing time, and we're so thankful for all the work that you do and for you being here today to share it with us. We hope that all of the viewers and people who are tuning into the series will know more about how to reach you and how to contact you and how to become part of the wonderful world of Kamakaku.
Absolutely, and I want to say there's a slide up here right now. Kamakaku's been going, the building was built in January, will be 20 years. And this is just a teeny tiny, picking of folks who have gone through the program. And I say this because as an academic advisor, I remember parents always asking, what can my child do with a Hawaiian language or Hawaiian studies degree? And on this picture here, we have folks that, are photographers, business leaders, school principals, professors, navigators, musicians, kia'i moana, kia'i aina, working in all private and public sectors. And so just a small representation to remind folks that there's so many things you can do with a Hawaiian Studies degree. You can go on to any graduate program. I'll give myself an example. My BA in Hawaiian Studies, my master's degree in counseling, and my PhD in ed admin. Who knew, right? And so we just encourage people to apply and to come and check out, even if it's just 107. If you're interested, if there's something inside of you that's kind of like stirring as you watch this, here's the contact information if you're interested and need more information and want to contact any of these professors to learn more. So I just want to end by saying mahalo. Mahalo to Nalani, the great co-host. Professor Osorio, mahalo. Professor Lilikala Kume'elehiva and Professor Noelani Punivai. Mahalo nui for being with us today.
Mahalo for having